in this intergalactic conversation, we are going to connect with the intergalactic community to receive insight, inspiration, and knowledge on the interdimensional, intergalactic regions that interact with planet Earth, that influence planet Earth, and as well as share in planet Earth's development and evolution. We're going to first discuss about the Pleiadian. The Pleiadian is a fifth dimensional, eighth dimensional vibration that even works with the 11 frequency. So as I am speaking, I will be channeling. So some of this knowledge will not be in our awareness, because it can be belonging to higher dimensional realms, dimensions, and planetary systems. But Pleiadians, they work with the Lyran knowledge of fifth dimensional manifestation, but they vibrate at the eighth dimension. So they represent, for humanity and planet Earth, the higher dimensional knowledge for creation. So Earth, we go up to the 7 dimensions. When we step into the 8th dimension, we're working with the Pleiadian. And the Pleiadian, they navigate through the 8th dimension all the way to the 14th. And when we start to, again, tune up even higher into more celestial realms, we're working with the Arcturians. And the Arcturians and Pleiadians are in collaboration for humanity's evolution. So the Pleiadians, they are seen as the renaissance of the universe. They have such artistry that is very ancient. They have such artistic expression, and a lot of our artistic expression comes from a Pleiadian 8th dimensional awareness that we can tap into through meditation, through sacred sight, as well as through raising our own vibration through the healing arts. They represent the healing arts in the sort of poetic, romantic, playful, and joyous way. Okay, so they have a philosophy that's very much similar to our philosophy of joy. Okay, when we think of joy in the simplicity of it, in connecting with nature. So we can, think of the Taoists. We can think of even Buddhism as a sort of clue into Pleiadian culture that has a huge emphasis on creating sacred sites. So the Pleiadian planets, which there are several, more than one, and they're not just in the Pleiades constellation as well. But they very much focus on sacred sites, kind of like feng shui, similar to Shinto shrines, where it's a way to access these Arcturian higher dimensions of intelligence. They work a lot with frequency, like frequency as in, could say music, sound, and I'm also shown crop circles. So they have a sort of sophistication on mandalas and geometry. They work very much with geometry in their manifestations. They have a very orca vibration, such as the dolphin, and even I'm seeing the killer whale. In the way that they have such a large emotional capacity, they have a huge emotional intelligence that we as human beings have. And we will kind of evolve to having an even greater emotional intelligence moving forward. Pleiadians, similar to us, they're very tribal. They work well in an elder system. Okay, they very much have a huge emphasis on creativity, sexuality, sensuality. They also are much older than Earth, so they have a compassion for Earth because they've actually been through similar experiences that we as human beings have been in our, you can say, our young years, our adolescent years on planet Earth and Mars, where they have experienced what I call Pleiadian wars in their sort of, we can say, their compared to us, right, in our sort of time on Earth and Mars, I would say in the time of Mars, right, in the time millions of years ago when we were, Mars was actually the older sister and Earth was the younger sister. They were called the two sisters, actually twins. They were called twin sisters in many ways. Because they were very identical and at a time many millions of years ago, and Earth was very we could say immature, right? It was underdeveloped at the time when we were on Mars, but Earth was generating life. It was generating you can say organisms, and there were species, right, different kinds of species that were kind of on the rise, but we as human beings were not on planet Earth at this time. So the Pleiadians work a lot with the blue frequency, right? The blue frequency is also known as the 11th frequency. We can call it the ethereal blue, gas stove blue, royal blue, even working with the indigo, magenta frequencies. And these have a lot to do with the higher mind, sort of working on the higher mind. And that's kind of what they've been doing for whoever knows how long, because time is quite vast, right? And thousands of years, millions of years can go by very quickly for a Pleiadian, while for us, it looks like a huge type of, like a long road type of thing. And this frequency has to do with the healing arts. They work with the aura, they work with the radiant body, they work with the emotional body, and they work with the arc line as well. So, but they're very rooted, okay? They're very rooted on their planets, we'll say. Very rooted, very connected. Like I said, they have sacred sites where they gather in a nature, right? And they do their own sort of ceremony. And they're kind of, we think of their spirituality has everything to do with star beings, kind of similar to what we have on Earth, where we kind of worship these sort of different deities that represent different sort of aspects of humanity. They too, they have kind of deities that they worship that represent different aspects of the Pleiadian. But what they would consider God, right, which is the kind of oneness of all of these deities, we'll say, is the universe. So they're very much about the universe, and they are considered explorers, where they enjoy gaining knowledge, right? And I see the Arcturians as kind of the higher, I would say, they're the higher dimensional versions of the Pleiadians, in the way that the Pleiadians have such a genuine desire for knowledge. Again, they're I wouldn't say intellectual as in sort of analytical, which they can possess that, which the Arcturians definitely move into a more analytical approach, where they become sort of Pleiadians are like Mandela makers, where they love to bring art and science together, right? Such as crop circles, that's like science and art together. But the Arcturians, they more focus on like the science, which is more about just seeing numbers, right? So when you connect with an Arcturian, they kind of give you these numbers, right? They're, sort of mathematicians, right? Where they have a sort of artistic expression, but it's not as expressive or as sort of expansive and exuberant and excited as the Pleiadians. So they work with exploring the universe, and they also are seen as they're mediators, and they are one of the high council of their very old system. And their star, one of the stars I'm seeing is like a blue star. It is very old and has a lot of knowledge, right? A star can be used as sort of interdimensional portal or device, but also is used as a Sachic record where there's knowledge hold. And this blue star is massive, very, very large, very old. It kind of holds a lot of Sachic records of the planets that they've interacted with for aeons, right? They work with aeons rather than, we work with ideas of like millions of years, billions of years. We don't really get into trillions of years. We don't really go that far. We can say, light years type of thing. But they are a being of light, so they've mastered their physical form. So they've definitely had a fifth dimensional mastery or manifestation, and collectively, right? And they've gone through, in their sort of transition, they've gone through Pleiadian wars, right? They've actually had an elite system I won't say long ago, or simultaneously as they're in this sort of the channel that's coming through. They actually had an elite system, okay? Elite system where there were people who were they were given more knowledge. They were given more they were given certain privileges that other Pleiadians did not have. So they did have an elite system, kind of what we think of the pyramid, where they had a sort of council that would sort of govern the mass majority of people. And the mass majority of people, very much like us on Earth, they weren't very educated, right? They weren't educated as the elite council group. Bloodlines were thoroughly educated and were given many privileges and many opportunities to further educate themselves. So they sort of dismantled their elder system. Not their elder system. They dismantled their elite system, okay? Because the Pleiadian wars, just like us on Earth, it created a lot of karma, okay? And this karma, it was really blocking them from really progressing spiritually. So there was a point where they became very stagnant, scientifically, artistically, because of the karma that they had, and they had to clear that if they wanted to evolve. So there was a period, kind of like us, where they were emotionally bankrupt, right? And their Pleiadian wars, it also bankrupt them emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. So that conflict, they knew it was very, we'll say, toxic to their bodies, to their minds, but also even to the environment in the universe. So there was a kind of period of a complete sort of systematic overhaul, where there was a major just transformation that happened pretty quickly, because they were on a timeline of really stepping into a future timeline, where, just like we experience in our timelines of our past, where there was just a lot of there was more of a sort of destructive energy. So they wanted to experience more emotional and spiritual evolution and renaissance and creativity and artistry. So in order to give more to that, they had to clear their karma. It's very difficult to be creative when you have all of this karma, okay, on your planet. It makes it very heavy to kind of move forward, creates like these blockages. So the Pleiadians, they work a lot with the Venus frequency, okay, in our system. They work a lot with the Venus frequency. They work a lot with the Jupiter frequency for sure. While the Octorians, they work a lot with the Pluto frequency, just in contrast. The Pluto frequency and the Uranus frequency, okay? So you can kind of sense the contrast and the different the different expressions that's going on. You know, again, they have deities of love, right? They have deities of sexuality, right? They have deities of unconditional love and even romance and childbearing, and deity for the goddess and for the divine masculine. So, you know, they have a lot of, they worship very much the divine, they worship the divine feminine very much. And we'll say their planet has a nice, well, planets have a nice balance between the divine masculine and the divine feminine, where they work in collaboration. Again, art and science. They really use art to convey science, such as crop circles and mandalas. It's like art that it really awakens the imagination. They also, they're volunteers. So they may appear, right, when we connect with them energetically, they may appear that they are not as strong or warrior-like than like the Anunnaki or the Syrian beings or even the Lyran beings that all have like a warrior type of presence. The Pleiadians have a more sensitive, soft, angelic presence than like a Anunnaki, like real masculine, like even militant leadership type of vibe. They have a sort of quiet leadership, but it gets the job done. And the thing is, they're willing to volunteer, and a lot of them did volunteer to come to Earth. You can say as star seeds, and have been coming here for many, many, many lifetimes in many ways to really help jumpstart human evolution. So they're kind of, their kind of counsel has a lot to do with spiritual evolution. And that's why whenever we start to, uncover spiritual evolution, finding a spiritual practice such as Qigong or spiritual practice such as Kundalini Yoga, we may even have experience with some sort of Pleiadian dream or Pleiadian kind of message or transmission, because they have a lot to do with the healing arts. A lot to do with the healing arts. They work a lot with the arts, again, like Reiki, Qigong, Tai Chi. They work a lot with self-blessing, right? They work a lot with, dance therapy, a form of self-expression to really heal trauma and pain. So they really do help us to heal our pain and trauma through like even recreational activities such as like surfing or kayaking. They may have an 8-dimensional presence where they're very light being, they have very much a lot of light, because they raise their vibration through a lot of their emotional, spiritual evolution in their, you could say, thousands of years of that. But they also do have a very physical, like, navel, where they actually do have a physical strength. They're fit. A lot of times we look at little gray aliens, which is the common alien people kind of connect to, right? That's associated with a lot of, it's associated with, the extracting of semen and eggs from men and women on this planet to help, to help to purify and cleanse their their DNA, because it's gotten very obstructed by their technology and the poisons and toxins and chemicals that they've been dumping into their bodies for so long, to the point where the Greys are infertile. That's why they're weak. They have big heads, yes, but they have little bodies, and they have what I call space poisoning. Okay, which is, we can have space poisoning too, and you don't need to go into space to get poisoned. If space poisoning can also be what we're technology, such as the 5G, okay, which is basically electromagnetic poisoning. Okay, so space poisoning is many times seen as electromagnetic poisoning. Okay, which is due to high charge of energy technology that it has a sort of a rhythmic broadcast, because it's not stable. Okay, that's what electromagnetic poisoning is. It's an unstable current of energy, so it's leaking, right? It's not properly transmuting itself, right? There's a disruption in the transmuting of the kind of toxins. Like space, there's toxins everywhere, right? And that's why we have to wear astronaut suits, and have to have pretty sophisticated spaceships to transmute. But electromagnetic waste or electromagnetic pollution is about we're working with a technology that's not fully developed. It's very immature, and it's not transmuting itself properly. Because when you can, when you're working with this, again, the cosmic energy, you need to know how to transmute. Because again, some of these energies can be toxic. Chemicals, we know that with our food, right? With our food, these sort of artificial, when we start to work with more artificial, we're starting to work with more toxins and chemicals. So the Greys are actually seen as future versions of ourselves, okay, in that timeline. In a timeline of more of, the electromagnetic pollution, infertility over many generations of that, leading into sort of clones and mutations and all of that. But Pleiadians, they kind of restored more what I call natural technology, okay, which is more in the realm of clean energy, renewable energy, okay, and that is why they they're strong, right? They're not big heads and then kind of little bodies, and they're infertile. Pleiadians had a period in their past where they were infertile, where they did have an experience of space poisoning due to their technology evolution, but they kind of remedied that through really emphasizing nature. So we talk about forest bathing, we talk about, natural national parks. They started to restore the ecosystem, right? And when the ecosystem really started to, renewal itself, the Pleiadians also started to become fertile again. So they started to understand that it's absolutely important that there's actually a strong connection to nature, and that we're helping the ecosystem, keeping it natural and healthy, where there's a lot of disturbance in the ecosystem due to electromagnetic pollution. It actually does disturb the human sort of DNA, okay, to making possible infertility. So we all have chemicals, toxins, and pollution in our body. And, the more that we connect with nature and the healing arts, we have the ability to sort of take infertility in someone and make them fertile, okay, especially the woman, okay? And, we are nature, and we can heal, right? We can heal, but it's also with Pleiadians, kind of similar to Anunnaki, okay? they have a very positive mind wave, okay? So when you connect with Pleiades, regardless of what chaos is going on and destruction, and there's a catastrophe going on. Pleiadians have a very positive mind wave, where they really look at things in the positive timeline, which is about healing. So they're not easily brought into these negative, like us, like humans, we work a lot with that negative mind, because we have a huge reptilian sort of interference on this earth throughout many thousands of years. And also the negative mind has been really charged in our past because of wars, going all the way to the Anunnaki, the reptilian, that really charged our negative mind, right? So, but naturally, human being is kind of like Pleiadian in the way of a very positive mind affirmation, which really gives way to activating the higher mind. And the Pleiadians, they work with the higher mind, which is, they're seen as peacekeepers. So wherever they go, if they go to Orion, Arcturus, Vega Star, they're seen as peacekeepers. And also, other planetary systems, other beings, they look up to Pleiadians. Okay, they look at Pleiadians as a very beautiful system. Like when people visit, it's very beautiful. They have created such a beautiful civilization that is protected, by the Anunnaki. Okay, they work, they protect the Pleiadians as well. Okay, because they have such a beautiful childlike mind, and their artistry over thousands of years it brings so much wealth to their planet, and also brings wealth to the what I call the universal commerce, which is like a universal currency where, right, that's pretty cool. And they have such wealth that they offer to the universal commerce, universal currency, through their craftsmanship, right, and through their education, because they're seen as spiritual teachers. They're seen as they teach healing of the arts. They're sort of master meditators. They work a lot with sound therapy. And they taught this to the ancient Egyptians in pre-dynastic Egypt. They taught about the sound, the 11th body in the yogic science is seen as the sound. It's the sound. So they work a lot with sound. So they have instruments like we have, in like the trumpet, the clarinet, the cello, the piano. We even have a little drum. We have these sounds that basically created from nature that we mimic, right? They do the same. They're very tribal, right? It's very tribal. And in the times of Africa, thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of years, they actually were kind of creating with us as human beings. They enjoy dance, they enjoy celebration, they enjoy feast, right? Again, they may have a real, higher mind, but they also have a sense of taste, right? Again, they work with that Venus energy. They love the taste, even fine wine, they love the taste of, maybe chocolate or something like that, right? A good meal. But they also are very much like orcas, dolphins, killer whales. They take care of their children. So their children kind of stay with them for many ways their whole life. Even when they're old, they get their jobs, they, go out and, do their mission, right? But they have a very strong elder system. So, they really do take care of their young, okay? And they really do have a system where their young, their children get to complete their mission. They get to be creative. Okay, they get to be what they're natural at being. So they're not forced into anything. Like we, in many ways, in our sort of hierarchical caste system, children are forced into a job or, you know, a particular life, even a particular career because of the parents or the generations, right? But Pleiadians, kids can become what is natural for them. And they also have a huge, like, taking care of their children. Their children, and a lot of times, when they have a child, there's a huge period of time, we'll say, or, you know, where they really spend a lot of time with their kids. Okay, their whole society is not about work. The whole society, in many ways, has a lot to do with educating the people. It has a lot to do with community. So where you see one Pleiadian, you always see another, because they're like tribes. They're like, you are my brother, you are my sister. So, you know, regardless of where people are at and what we call a caste system, if they're a farmer or if they're like a master engineer, they are all considered each other brothers and sisters. Okay, and they actually, like dolphins, if a mother dies and she has kids, there will be Pleiadians, other women, mother figure that will come in and help raise that child. Okay, their population, I would say, is very moderate. I wouldn't say that because they have different planetary systems, okay, they're not just all on one planet, okay, so they could have billions of people, right? But they're not all on one planet. They're kind of, they're on these different planets, okay? They have not just in one system, in one even constellation, there are even other constellations as well that are, you know, very far away from each other, that requires to transform, go through the portal to get to these, right, these far distant regions. But to them, that can be like a 10-minute sort of drive, right? Well, for us, that would be like, 1,000 years, right, type of thing. But they really, really love their children. There's a huge emphasis on children, on child raising, child development, and they share a lot of this with planet Earth. Again, they have a huge like Ma frequency, like the mother, the goddess, the woman, her baby, her, they really set each other up for success. And it took much evolution to get to this point. It wasn't just, one day, let's all be equal. No, they had an elite system, okay? And they had a downfall, and they had a continued downfall. It was like the never-ending war of Star Wars type of hype, right? And then they had cheap energy at one time too, which is, again, electromagnetic pollution. And that cheap energy was destroying their environment. Their ecosystem was falling apart, So they all collectively made the choice to override the system that they've had, okay, because they were forced by the environment. But they didn't force themselves. They didn't force each other, they wanted to. And that was the greatest sort of Pleiadian historic moment, right? When we think of like Martin Luther King Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, or, we think of these significant historic days, right? Like the day where, African Americans have the right to vote, right? Or, the abolishing of slavery, like that kind of thing. This was a huge celebration because all of the individual, I would say, there was like factions, I would say, all of the factions that governed, different, aspects of their society, they all agreed, all of them. And it took many years for everyone to agree in this kind of major systematic change. But like us, they do have factions. But it's not a hierarchical caste system where you're forced into something that makes you unhappy. Because they understood that unhappiness, that void, that emotional bankruptcy that people felt, it actually really lowered the vibration of everyone. That kind of poverty or that kind of negativity, that kind of self-entrapment or self-hatred, all it did was just keep the whole collective trapped, the whole collective stalled and, blocked and stagnant. So even when these elites tried to evolve into higher vibrations, they couldn't, because it's like you have to evolve together. You can't just be elites and then, everybody else is kind of stunned. So they understood that, you really can't get to these higher vibrations, or you really can't expand even creatively, because that mental conflict creates so many blockages that they just were presented with one after the other, that they just like, whoa, we just got to change the whole thing because this is not working, okay? But they do in many ways still have an elite system, okay? They do in many ways still have an elite system. But it's more of it's closely to a tribal elder system than elite type of, the all-seeing eye, and they, kind of control everyone, and everyone is feeling like they, must lick the feet of these elite, and the elites, have a egotistic type of thing. Okay, not the elites when we think of the Anunnaki, okay, which can be a little bit egotistic, okay, in the way, worship me, I am your God. Right? I am your leader. You must submit to me, the domination type of vibe. The Pleiadians, they have a sort of elite system where they have these beings who are, sort of, they've gotten their position because of their advanced knowledge, their resume, basically. And, beings, Pleiadians, it's very interesting. They have what we call a universal resume, because they're embedded in intergalactic, interdimension regions. They're in, Earth, we're earthbound, right? The only thing we think about outside of Earth is Mars when it comes to, life, right? Mars, right? And that's not even a terraformed planet. It's inhabitable. That's the farthest we can go when it comes to, collaboration with other life or other planet type of thing. But the Pleiadians, again, in their sort of even higher vibrational state is the Arcturians. And, they're very good companions with the Arcturians. And it's interesting because the Arcturians and the Pleiadians came to Earth in times of Lemuria to really, really set up the Pleiadian agenda, okay, which has been going on for maybe millions of years since Mars. But humanity in many ways was set up on Mars. I'm hearing a draconian, which is not negative or positive, which it's a different design, and it has a lot to do with again, they work with pyramids. Which Mars at a time was actually sort of, there was pyramids that were kind of coming together, okay, but a lot of them I see are underground. So I don't know if there was a time on Mars where when the pyramids were being built, it had to be underground, but there's something about these underground type of cities, right, that we even have on Earth. A lot of underground cities on Earth that have a large, pretty good population of, some of them are draconian, okay, and their climate is very different. They live kind of in a more underground environment, okay, well, we as human beings, we would not really do well underground, because we our skin has to receive sunlight, like pure sunlight. While draconian skin, I feel, again, could, they can not need as much as the sunlight as we would, they're more of, could be an underground type of creature, we'll say, or species of intelligent form. So draconian, but, the main, there's a huge kind of, discovery of this Earth, our system, I say this solar system, not necessarily this Earth. I feel this discovery came from, I feel like it might have came from the Draconian, right? I'm looking at the Lyran's constellation, I'm seeing the Draconian, and there was a discovery of the system, right? They were, again, they were on the hunting for other worlds, other planets, because of I'm seeing very few Draconians, so I feel like there could have been a mass wipeout of their population. So they were looking to another system to kind of live on, I would say, to repopulate, and to have their world, their new world. And Mars was that maybe millions of years ago, but then the Anunnaki kind of came as engineers to help us stabilize the system, because long ago, Mars, Earth, these systems were not very it's not very stable, and the Anunnaki are like supreme like engineers. Like when we think of like mechanics and like underneath the car, and like they're professional in the engineering. So I feel like the Anunnaki, I feel like they brought the moon to this system, Earth particularly. I don't know if we had the moon originally. It just seems too close, and it seems too perfect in the sort of distance, the actual mass of the moon, and the even the orbiting of the moon. It just seems too perfect. If it's just a little too hot, a little too cold, a little too far, a little too close, it creates a magnetic pull that could either create massive oceans, like huge waves, right? Or it could, really off the axis of the Earth, right? But I feel the Anunnaki kind of brought a knowledge, right? Their knowledge is like engineering, right? And terraforming of planets. And I'm seeing master like geologists and master and also I'm getting terraforming, but something about bioengineering as well, when it comes to bioengineering like fruits and vegetables, when it comes to even like transforming like a planet that like Mars, and growing. Like they could grow in the desert. Like I don't know how they could go into like the deepest desert, and they could grow like potatoes, because they know how to bioengineer the potato, and also they know how to alter the environment. Like they can alter an ecosystem, okay? And that's, the Anunnaki and their kind of connection to Earth. But going back to the Pleiadians, the Pleiadians, they connect to us through our creativity and our mission. So if you pray, like to your mission, and like, I have a mission, which is they see as your creative destiny, which is about knowledge, education. You want to develop something within you, okay? That they see every being wants to develop something within them, okay? So that's why their whole system is about educating themselves, each other, and it's all about following what's natural for you. Studying what helps you to grow. They're all about, helping each other to grow. They encourage each other to study, to learn, and to become like professors. Because Pleiadians in many ways are like professors, just in different, factions of that, okay? But there's no like competition. There's no like I need to compete with this archaeologist because I'm an archaeologist, okay? And there's not enough, or there's only one position type of thing. They don't really think like that. They have more of like, they trust in the divine. Like they have such a connection, like the universe. Like they really feel what is meant to be will be. They really feel like if I'm meant to have this position, it will happen. That kind of positive expectation. They very much surrender to the universe, and they really trust in the process of their fulfilling of their mission. So they're not like gun-ho, I'm going to force it, and I'm just going to like, race ahead type of thing. They have more of a sensitive approach, where they have more of a conversation with the universe, okay? where, you know, the universe speaks to them in ways of dreams and ways of feelings and ways of their creativity, and they really surrender to that, okay? And they really try to, you know, they have a culture really following their intuition, okay, and really encouraging themselves to expand, but also to really value where they come from, like their ancestors. So Pleiadians have, you know, they have a, not all beings have a sense of connection to their ancestors, you know, but the Pleiadians, and particularly the Anunnaki, have a connection to ancestors. The Anunnaki worship ancestors, like worship their great grandmother, like a sort of altar, right? They have like statues of their grandmothers type of vibe. You know, and Pleiadians, they have statues too of like Pleiadian figures, like we do of, you know, important figures. But the Anunnaki really have statues of like their grandma and their great grandma, and they really emphasize their lineage. You know, Anunnaki beings are straight up about generational wealth, and they're very more like forceful when it comes to their mission. Like they're a little bit more intimidating, very ballsy, like New York vibe, right? Like even Middle Eastern vibe, you know, because they, you know, the Middle Easterns are seen as, you know, Anunnaki's bloodline. Like the Anunnaki look at Saudi Arabia as their descendants, as kind of like their offspring, we'll say, right? Because they, you know, they shared their kind of, you know, the humans at the, you know, long ago got to experience an Anunnaki culture and civilization, and they mimicked it, right? They mimicked it, okay, in the earlier forms. But, you know, Anunnaki were very patriarchal. You know, they have huge respect for women, and women are like warriors. They're very different from Pleiadian women, okay, just in the contrast. Anunnaki women are very, like, maybe thicker, they're more bulky, maybe larger breasts, maybe, you know, bigger hips, you know, and these women are seen more as like the depiction of a woman warrior, like Hatshepsut, you know, in ancient Egypt, or Cleopatra, like, you know, the women in that, the historic women in ancient Egypt going to Isis were seen as Anunnaki women, like big eyes, intense, alluring eyes, you know, long black hair, you know, brown skin, goddess of like true personal power, like real leader women, right? And it kind of intimidating, right? And you know, the Anunnaki, they're considered the great judges. So when they come to planets, they come to criticize. They come to look at your planet and kind of tell you what you're doing wrong, kind of way, right? Sort of, I won't say egotistic or arrogant, but they do have those tendencies, or have, you know, had those tendencies. Not all of them, but right, that's where we get that from in many ways, with our control, our militant control, our sort of authority figure. We get it from that, and we also get the law and order, like the eye for an eye type of thing. That was sort of coming from like a Anunnaki type of observation, but I don't think that they actually do that. But they definitely, Anunnaki definitely have had slaves. Okay, they had slaves, and you know, they had, you know, slaves, and they kind of taught us about the slaves type of thing. Again, it's not negative or positive, it's just a being, right? And the Anunnaki, they very much had slaves in the way that, because they were such master engineers, you know, people had to do the work. You know, they were master builders. They you know, building, right? Building of they also love to be worshipped, right? So you need energy, you need people, right? They actually gain energy from the worshiping of them, right? So that's why they worship their grandmother and grandpas and all of that kind of stuff, because they know worshiping them gives them energy to be resurrected, or to be reborn, right? So there's that kind of difference in culture, as you can see. Very, very different from a Pleiadian vibe. Pleiadian is definitely more subtle. And they're definitely, again, more like a Lemurian, where they're very naturalists. Anunnaki, like ancient Egypt, they have large populations, okay, sometimes, Anunnaki, and they have the rise and fall such as us. But, you know, they love building, like ancient Egypt, they love building, right? I feel like ancient Egypt had a huge Anunnaki kind of in style. Okay, we'll say style in architecture, in you know, society, law and order, even the way that, you know, the hierarchical caste system, the sort of economy. It was all kind of Anunnaki type of vibe. And they looked at them as the gods. But Pleiadians, people, they call themselves the guides. They don't call themselves the gods. Okay, that's the difference. They're not, you know, righteous. They don't call themselves the gods. They say we're the guides. Because they like to really keep people, keep beings in equality. Okay, they've trained themselves to view themselves and other beings as equal. Okay, they've done it for so long that they don't consider themselves gods, even when we do consider them gods. They are naturalists. They're like herbalists. They are really into like more of a homeopathic approach to living and consuming and interacting with the ecosystem. They really like to preserve the ecosystem. Like Lemuria was very different from Atlantis, because Lemuria was very was very naturalist, right? The technology was very like magical, because you couldn't even see it. While in Atlantis, you could see the technology. You could touch it. You could see the machine. You could see the temple. You could see the pyramid. You could see the kind of engineering of the city, right? Like you could go in a Roman city and you could clearly see this is a technology. This is an irrigation system. This is an aqueduct system, right? But Lemuria, you couldn't see it, because it was like a technology, a natural technology, where it was like almost like a Pleiadian, is almost like a law of attraction type of vibe, like a pure manifestation, where they didn't want to really alter anything. So they really blended everything with nature. They used nature to like as a way to like, they used the natural formations to kind of put in their technology. Like their technology was also natural formation. So it's very, very interesting. So anything else about the Pleiadians that want to come through? They really work with the heart frequency. So whenever you're working with your heart frequency, your magnetism, your radiance, your unconditional love, you're connecting with Pleiadians, because they really, really represent the love, right? Peace, and equality, in the way that they are seen as the council. You know, they're seen as the guides, the elders. They're seen as, you know, peacekeepers, mediators, but they are very tough. So they're not afraid of Anunnaki, the giant, you know, sort of muscular beings who are can be gun-ho, right? Can be very like New Yorker vibe. You know, they're not intimidated by any of them. And that's their kind of gift, because they know all the languages, okay? Like Zeta language, Arcturian, Orion, Lyran. I mean, a single Pleiadian probably knows maybe 22 languages. I mean, whoa, right? While other, you know, beings such as Anunnaki, you know, they don't know that many languages, right? So Pleiadians are respected, because they really do try to mediate, okay? And they really do try to help the evolution of a planet. So people or beings don't really try to interfere with that, okay? Especially now, because Pleiadians, you know, they're like professors. right? They're seen as professors. You know, Anunnaki are seen as like, you know, military, authoritative, like, you know, like a pharaoh, like a king, you know, as generational wealth and sometimes privilege, and, you know, seen as like the master of even technology and civilization. But Pleiadians, they are just professors. They teach. And a lot of what they teach is, you know, like they love to teach about the, you know, healing arts. They teach about justice, equality. They teach, you know, very similar to what we teach. You know, their focus, the reason why they're so respected is because they have such an angelic presence wherever they go, right? It's just like you cannot be angry at a Pleiadian, right? Just like you can't be really angry at a child. If you are, it's because you have some issues, right? But the Pleiadians, again, why we feel connection to them on Earth and planet Earth, you know, this especially is because they have really gave us tools, right? Again, when we had nothing on planet Earth, like when we were like Anunnaki type of slave vibe, like Pleiadians generously gave us knowledge, right? In times where we were the lowest, the low of the low, right? Because they understood that they understood humanity's potential. So again, they're like teachers. They encourage you, like, you can do, you know, you can pass this test, you can get into college, you can get a good job, like that kind of thing. Like mothers as well, you know, and fathers in a very encouraging, constructive way. And that's why there's a very deep, soulful connection with Pleiades, because they really, really came and offered technology, not technology like Anunnaki or like technology like the Syrian or the Orion. Their technology they offered us was like something of the healing arts, like something to help us like complete our mission, help us get through an era. Like they helped create Renaissance, they helped create art, they helped create music, they helped us to really redirect from destructive patterns into more constructive, creative patterns. So, these are the Pleiadians beings that I will share right now. Again, it's like so, you know, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. But this is what I want to share with you guys thus far.